too busy trying to understand all this stuff about Negroes.
Oh, bossy, now don't be...
I told you I heard something in the middle of the night once. With some drunken bum across the alley yelling, "Throw the dirty niggers out." That was us.
Some actors pretend to be tough. These men lived it. War medals, broken bones, real fights. This isn't just your ordinary Hollywood story. These actors were the real deal. Get ready for the ultimate list of Hollywood's toughest black legends. Stay tuned, because number 1 will shock you. Number 20, Woody Strode. Before Hollywood, he played in the NFL, trained with Olympians, and served in the military. But his toughest battle was yet to come. Woody Strode wasn't just built for Hollywood, he was built for war, sports, and combat. Standing at 6 foot 4 inches tall with a sculpted physique, Strode dominated in everything from football to professional wrestling. Before the big screen, he played in the NFL as one of the first black players, competing for the Los Angeles Rams in 1946. But his toughness wasn't limited to sports. During World War II, Strode served in the U.S. Army Corps, a branch of the military that prepared black pilots for combat. When he left the service, Hollywood was still struggling to accept black actors in strong roles, but Strode forced the industry to change. He gained fame in Acrobatics, 1960, where his intense fight scene with Kirk Douglas became one of the most brutal and realistic battles in cinema history. Douglas later admitted Strode could have taken him down in a real fight. Off-screen, he trained in judo and wrestling, working with the legendary Bobo Brazil, one of wrestling's biggest pioneers. His strength and athleticism led him to star in physically demanding roles in Sergeant Rutledge and The Professionals. Quentin Tarantino even modeled Django's character after him. He was close friends with John Ford and often went drinking with Hollywood legends like John Wayne, despite Wayne's reputation for racial tensions. Number 19, James Edwards. Imagine fighting in World War II, getting wounded, and then playing soldiers on the big screen. This man lived both realities. James Edwards was one of the first black actors to play dignified military roles in Hollywood because he actually lived them. Before his acting career, Edwards served in World War II as an officer, experiencing real combat before stepping in front of the camera. He was wounded in battle and returned home with scars, both physical and mental. Hollywood in the 1940s wasn't kind to black actors, often forcing them into stereotypical roles. But Edwards refused. He became the first black actor to lead a major war film, starring in Home of the Brave, 1949, where he faced a soldier facing both the enemy and racism within his own unit. The film was so controversial that theaters in the South banned it. Edwards' most famous role came in The Steel Helmet, 1951, a brutal war film where he played a combat medic. Director Samuel Fuller cast him for his authenticity, knowing Edwards had seen real war up close. His performance was so powerful that actual soldiers praised him for getting the experience right. Tragically, his career was cut short when he mysteriously died at just 51 years old, under circumstances that are still debated. Some believe Hollywood's racial politics played a role in the decline of his career and his struggles near the end. James Edwards was initially cast in the iconic film Patton, 1970, but was suddenly replaced, rumored to be due to racism in Hollywood. Number 18, Stepin Fetchit. He played a clumsy character on screen, but behind the scenes, he trained world champions, including Muhammad Ali. This man was no joke. Lincoln Perry, better known by his stage name, Stepin Fetchit, is often remembered as Hollywood's first black millionaire, yet one of its most controversial figures. But what most people don't know is that behind his comedic persona, Perry was a boxing strategist and mentor to some of the greatest fighters in history. During Hollywood's golden age, Perry was known for playing a slow-moving, lazy character, something that earned him criticism for promoting racial stereotypes. But Perry was far from weak. In real life, he was a brilliant mind in boxing, working closely with fighters like Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali. He taught Alley the psychological tactics that would later make him the greatest trash talker in sports. Alley's iconic rope-a-dope strategy, well, that came straight from Perry's playbook. He helped Liston master intimidation, turning him into one of the most feared heavyweight champions. Perry even advised Joe Louis on mental warfare before big fights. Despite his legacy in boxing, Perry's career in Hollywood wasn't as kind. As black audiences grew tired of stereotypical roles, he faded from the industry and lost his fortune. Still, his impact in the ring lives on through the world's greatest fighters. Muhammad Ali once said that Perry taught me how to be the champ before I was the champ. Number 17, Bernie Hamilton. Before playing one of the toughest cops on TV, he trained as a real-life boxer, but his biggest fight was in Hollywood. Bernie Hamilton might be most famous as Captain Doby in Starsky and Hutch, but his journey to Hollywood was anything but ordinary. Before stepping in front of the camera, Hamilton was a trained boxer and a street fighter who knew how to handle himself. He grew up in tough neighborhoods where he learned how to survive through sheer grit and determination. Hamilton was initially set for a career in the ring. He trained with a welterweight boxer, sparring with some of the best in his era. His athletic build and fighting spirit made him a natural in action roles. But Hollywood wasn't ready for strong black leading men, so Hamilton fought his way into the industry. He broke through in the 1960s, landing roles in films like The Young One and Scream Blackula Scream. But his most famous role came in the 1970s when he was cast as the no-nonsense police captain in Starsky and Hutch. His portrayal was so convincing that real police officers admired his toughness. Behind the scenes, Hamilton was known for standing his ground against producers who tried to limit black roles in Hollywood. He demanded respect and changed how black men were portrayed on TV. His ability to fight, both in the streets and in the industry, made him one of Hollywood's real tough guys. Bernie Hamilton refused to play weak characters and turned down roles that didn't match his strong, authoritative personality. And we're just getting started. The legends only get tougher from here, and number 1 is someone you might not expect. Number 16, Canada Lee. He started as a professional fighter, became a Hollywood star, and later risked everything to fight for civil rights. This is real toughness. Canada Lee was a champion boxer before he became one of Hollywood's most powerful actors. He started his career in the 1920s as a welterweight fighter, winning 90% of his matches by knockout. But after suffering a serious eye injury in the ring, he was forced to retire early. Rather than give up, Lee reinvented himself, this time as an actor. His big break came in Body and Soul 1947, where he played a former boxer struggling with corruption. The film was so realistic because Lee was drawing from his own experiences in the sport. But his real fight came off screen. In the 1940s and 1950s, Lee became a strong voice for civil rights, speaking out against Hollywood's racist practices. This made him a target of the FBI during the Red Scare, and he was blacklisted from the industry. His once promising career was destroyed for speaking the truth. Lee passed away at just 45 years old, but his legacy lived on. Many credit him for opening the door for future black actors to play strong, dignified roles. Orson Welles once said, "Canada Lee was the greatest actor I ever worked with." Number 15, Herb Jeffries. Before Hollywood's black cowboys became a trend, there was one man who lived it first, riding, fighting, and breaking every rule along the way. Herb Jeffries was Hollywood's first black singing cowboy, but unlike many actors, he did his own stunts every single time. Raised in Detroit, Jeffries became obsessed with westerns, but realized that there were 0 black cowboys in Hollywood. So he changed that. In the 1930s, he wrote, produced, and starred in The Bronze Buckaroo, becoming the first black actor to lead a western film. He rode real horses, fought in actual cowboy duels, and handled firearms like a pro. His performances weren't just for show. He was a trained stunt rider and expert marksman. During World War II, Jeffries joined the U.S. Army Air Corps, serving in a segregated military unit. When he returned to Hollywood, he found that the cowboy genre had changed. Instead of trying to fit into a system that ignored black actors, he switched careers and became a jazz singer, collaborating with legends like Duke Ellington. Jeffries' impact went beyond Hollywood. He proved that black cowboys were real, paving the way for later Western stars like Morgan Freeman and Idris Elba. Jeffries once broke his leg during a horse-riding stunt and finished the scene before going to the hospital. Number 14. Melvin Van Peebles. Before breaking every rule in filmmaking, he served in the U.S. Air Force and lived life with zero limits. This man was unstoppable. Melvin Van Peebles wasn't just tough, he was fearless. Before making history in Hollywood, he served in the U.S. Air Force as a flight navigator. While most filmmakers climbed the industry ladder, Van Peebles built his own. He taught himself filmmaking, directed, acted, and even performed his own stunts. His most famous film, Sweetback's Badass Song, 1971, was so controversial that the FBI monitored its release, fearing that it would incite rebellion. He funded the film himself, performed his own fight scenes, and even injured himself in the process. But the industry wasn't ready for him. Van Peebles was often banned from major studios because he refused to play by the rules. He responded by creating an entire independent film movement, inspiring legends like Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino. Off-screen, he was an author, playwright, and Wall Street stock trader. The man did it all and never let Hollywood control him. Van Peebles contracted an STD while filming on the scenes in Sweetback, then successfully demanded that the studio pay for his medical bills. Number 13. Billy Daniels. Before he became a jazz sensation, he was a real fighter. And when war called, he stepped up without hesitation. Billy Daniels had two talents, knocking people out and stealing the stage. Before his fame as a singer and actor, Daniels trained as a boxer, stepping into the ring more than a few times. But his toughest battle came during World War II, when he served in the U.S. Army. After returning from the war, Daniels didn't just fade into the background. He became one of the biggest jazz stars of his time. He was the first black performer to headline in Las Vegas, shattering racial barriers. But he didn't just perform, he fought. When venues refused to let black audiences in, Daniels walked out of contracts and demanded change. On screen, Daniels often played strong, charismatic figures, bringing the same power he had in real life. Even in his later years, he remained a street-smart fighter at heart, never backing down from a challenge. Daniels was once kicked out of a club for defending black patrons, then returned as the headline act a year later. Number 12. Moses Gunn. He could quote Shakespeare, throw a punch, and dominate any scene. But his toughest fights weren't on screen, they were in real life. Moses Gunn wasn't just an actor, he was a force of nature. With a deep, commanding voice and a presence that could silence a room, he was built for powerful roles. But before Hollywood, Gunn had to fight his way out of extreme poverty. Raised in St. Louis, he survived street violence and racial discrimination before finding his calling in theater. Gunn was a master of Shakespearean acting, something rare for black actors at the time. He performed in classics like Othello and Macbeth with an intensity that rivaled the greats. But he wasn't just about words, he had the physicality of a trained fighter. His muscular build and street-tough upbringing made him a natural for roles in Shaft, 1971, and Ragtime, 1981. Off-screen, Gunn was just as fearless. He refused to take demeaning roles, often challenging Hollywood executives who tried to limit black actors. He spent his career demanding better representation, opening doors for future generations. Moses Gunn once confronted a Hollywood producer who tried to underplay him, then walked out, refusing to work for less than his worth. Number 11. Rex Ingram. He stood over 6 feet tall, had the voice of a king, and refused to bow to anyone. This man was a legend. Rex Ingram had a presence that commanded respect. Born in 1895, he grew up in the Deep South, where opportunities for black men were almost non-existent. But Ingram was different. He had the height, strength, and intelligence to make people notice. Before Hollywood, he worked as a prize fighter, using his physical power to earn a living. When he entered acting, his deep, booming voice made him a natural for roles of authority. He was cast as everything from Arabian wizards to African kings, most famously playing the genie in The Thief of Baghdad, 1940. But Hollywood tried to keep him in a box, offering him only stereotypical roles. Ingram fought back, choosing parts that showcased dignity and intelligence, rather than playing into racist tropes. He spoke multiple languages, was highly educated, and often outsmarted Hollywood executives who underestimated him. Even in the face of discrimination, Ingram's legacy as a powerful, respected black actor remains untouched. During World War II, Ingram turned down roles that portrayed black men negatively, even when it meant losing major paychecks. Number 10. Shackman Crothers. He wasn't just a voice actor, he was a war veteran, a martial artist, and a man who fought his way to success. Most people remember Shackman Crothers as the smooth-voiced jazz musician and actor, but behind his charismatic smile was a man with serious toughness. Born in 1910, he served in World War II, where he faced real-life combat before making it to Hollywood. But even before that, Crothers had to fight, literally. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, he learned martial arts and street survival skills to protect himself. This helped him in his later years when he refused to take disrespect from Hollywood executives who didn't take black performers seriously. Despite his warm personality, he was a fighter at heart. He broke into film at a time when black actors were given limited roles. But Crothers refused to play stereotypes. He made history in The Shining, 1980, as one of the first black actors in a major horror role. Even Jack Nicholson said Crothers was one of the toughest guys on set. He continued working until his final days, proving that real toughness isn't just about muscle, it's about resilience. At 70 years old, Crothers could still do martial arts moves most younger actors couldn't even attempt. Number 9. Paul Winfield. From the army to the big screen, he carried discipline and power wherever he went. And when Hollywood pushed back, he pushed harder. Paul Winfield was a man of military discipline and Hollywood excellence. Before becoming a celebrated actor, he served in the U.S. Army, where he learned the toughness that would later define his acting career. He didn't just play strong characters, he was one. Winfield was best known for playing historical and authority figures, from Martin Luther King Jr. to high-ranking military officials. But what made him unique was his ability to blend intellectual power with real physical presence. His deep, commanding voice and muscular frame made him a natural leader on screen. But Hollywood, as usual, had barriers for black actors. Winfield fought against racist typecasting, ensuring he wasn't just playing side characters but leading roles. His performance in Sounder, 1972, earned him an Academy Award nomination, and he went on to star in classics like The Terminator, 1984. Behind the scenes, he was known as one of the most intense method actors, often staying in character even off camera to deliver his best performance. His commitment was unmatched, and his presence in Hollywood, well, it shattered stereotypes. Winfield once turned down a multi-million-dollar role because he refused to play a weak black character in a racist script. Number 8. Brock Peters. He played some of the most intense characters in Hollywood, but behind the scenes, he was even tougher. His voice alone could shake a room. Brock Peters was Hollywood's go-to actor for strength, authority, and quiet intensity. His deep, booming voice and fierce screen presence made him unforgettable. But Peters wasn't just playing strong characters, he was one in real life. Born in 1927, Peters faced the full force of Hollywood's racial barriers. Instead of backing down, he forced his way into powerful roles, starring in classics like To Kill a Mockingbird, 1962, where he played Tom Robinson, a character whose emotional depth and tragic fate made the world take notice. His toughness wasn't just emotional. Peters had a physical presence that made him a natural for action-heavy roles like in Soylent Green, 1973, and Star Trek. He was also a powerful activist, using his influence to challenge racism in Hollywood. Off-screen, he trained in combat sports and was known for his no-nonsense attitude. If a director tried to push him into a weak role, he walked out without hesitation. His commanding presence, intellect, and refusal to be stereotyped made him one of Hollywood's toughest icons. He was so convincing in To Kill a Mockingbird that audiences left the theater genuinely angry at his on-screen conviction. Number 7. Juano Hernandez. He started as a circus performer, became a boxer, and ended up being one of the most respected black actors in Hollywood. Juano Hernandez had one of the most unexpected paths to Hollywood greatness. Born in Puerto Rico in 1896, he grew up tough, trained as a boxer and acrobat in traveling circuses. This physicality later helped him pull off his own stunts in action-heavy films, something few actors dared to do in the Golden Age. But his real fight wasn't in the ring. It was against Hollywood's racist casting system. Instead of playing subservient roles, Hernandez demanded to play educated, strong, and dignified black men. His breakthrough came in Intruder in the Dust, 1949, a film where he played a falsely accused man who refuses to beg for his life. Critics called it one of the greatest performances ever seen in a courtroom drama. Hernandez's presence was unmatched. He had a powerful baritone voice, an intense stare, and an athlete's build. Directors often said that once he stepped into a scene, no one else mattered. He broke barriers, took on dangerous roles, and refused to compromise his principles. Hernandez performed his own stunts well into his 50s, something that even Hollywood's biggest action stars wouldn't risk. Number 6. Raymond St. Jacques. Before he was a Hollywood star, he fought real battles in the streets. His tough guy persona wasn't an act, it was his life. Raymond St. Jacques wasn't just a tough guy on screen, he lived it in real life. Born in 1930, he grew up in tough New York neighborhoods where he had to fight just to survive. Unlike many actors, he didn't just play brawlers, he was one. He trained in boxing and street fighting, and his reputation for being impossible to intimidate followed him into Hollywood. St. Jacques broke ground as the first black actor to have a regular role in a Western TV series, starring in Rawhide. But his most iconic role came in Cotton Comes to Harlem, 1970, where he played a no-nonsense detective who broke racial stereotypes and took down criminals with pure physical force. Hollywood execs didn't always like him because he refused to take weak roles. If a script didn't show black characters with dignity, he threw it out. He demanded respect, fought for better roles, and changed how Hollywood portrayed black men. During a heated argument with a director, St. Jacques once challenged him to a fight, and the director backed down instantly. Number 5. Yaphet Kotto. He played terrifying villains, but in real life, he was even tougher. This man could hold his own in any fight. Yaphet Kotto wasn't just one of Hollywood's toughest actors, he was a powerhouse. Standing at 6 feet 3 inches tall, with a massive build, Kotto had a presence that could shake a room. But before becoming an actor, he trained in martial arts and hand-to-hand combat, making him one of the few actors who could actually fight. Born in 1939, Kotto had a difficult childhood, constantly getting into fights and learning survival skills on the streets. His toughness led him to play some of Hollywood's most legendary bad guys, including Mr. Big in Live and Let Die, 1973, the first black James Bond villain. He was so intimidating that Roger Moore later admitted Kotto could have beaten him in a real fight. Kotto's biggest role came in Alien, 1979, where he played Parker, a character originally written for a white actor. He refused to play the scared black man trope and instead made Parker one of the strongest characters in the film. Directors admired him, but some feared his real intensity, because when Cotto got angry, people listened. Cotto turned down the role of Lando Calrissian in Star Wars because he didn't want to be typecast as a sidekick. Number 4, Carl Weathers. Before becoming Apollo Creed, he tackled real NFL players and fought his way into Hollywood. This man was built for battle. Carl Weathers wasn't just acting when he threw punches in Rocky, 1976. He was a real athlete with actual combat skills. Before Hollywood, he played in the NFL for the Oakland Raiders, where he learned toughness on the field. Standing 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighing over 220 pounds, he had the power and speed to dominate opponents. After his football career, Weathers trained in the boxing and martial arts area, making him one of the few actors who could actually back up his on-screen fights. His breakout role as Apollo Creed turned him into a legend, going toe-to-toe with Sylvester Stallone in some of the most intense fight scenes ever filmed. But Weathers wasn't just about sports. He was disciplined, strategic, and fiercely independent. He refused to be typecast, taking on tough, intelligent roles in films like Predator 1987, where he stood alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger and proved he was just as tough as any action star of the time. During the filming of Rocky, Weathers accidentally hit Stallone so hard that it left him bruised for days. Number 3, Fred Williamson. An NFL legend, a martial artist, and an action hero, this man didn't just play tough, he was tough. Fred Williamson earned his nickname, the Hammer, for a reason. Before Hollywood, he was one of the hardest-hitting defensive backs in the NFL, playing for teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers and Oakland Raiders. He was known for brutal tackles that left opponents shaken. After retiring from football, Williamson trained in karate and boxing, using his athleticism to transition into acting. He didn't wait for Hollywood to give him a shot. He created his own films, produced his own roles, and became one of the biggest action stars of the 1970s. He starred in Black Caesar, 1973, 3 the Hard Way, 1974, and From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996, proving that he could throw down with the best of them. Williamson had one rule for his career: he never lost a fight on screen. He refused to play weak characters, setting a new standard for black actors in Hollywood. Directors knew if they cast him, they had to show him as a winner, not a victim. Williamson turned down major Hollywood roles because they required him to go out like a punk in fight scenes. Number 2, Jim Brown. He was the most dominant player in football history, then became an action hero who refused to take orders from Hollywood. This man was built for greatness. Jim Brown isn't just one of the toughest actors in Hollywood, he's one of the toughest men in history. Before stepping into film, he was an NFL legend, widely considered the greatest running back of all time. Playing for the Cleveland Browns, he led the league in rushing nearly every season, and was known for breaking through tackles like they were nothing. At 6 foot 2 inches tall and 230 pounds of pure muscle, Brown didn't just play football, he dominated it. But he left the game at his peak to take on Hollywood, where he quickly made history in The Dirty Dozen, 1967. In an era where black actors were sidelined, Brown fought for equal screen time, bigger roles, and real action scenes. He redefined the action hero, starring in films like Slaughter, 1972, and 3 the Hard Way, 1974. Unlike other stars, he did his own stunts, performed real fight scenes, and never let Hollywood make him weak. Even off-screen, Brown was a civil rights activist and a fearless leader, willing to challenge anyone, including Hollywood executives and the mafia. Jim Brown once knocked out a Hollywood producer who disrespected him, and then walked off the set like nothing happened. Number 1, Sidney Poitier. He didn't just fight battles in films, he fought an entire system and won. His strength wasn't just physical, it changed history. Sidney Poitier might not have been an NFL star or a boxer, but his toughness was unmatched. Born into extreme poverty in the Bahamas, he moved to the U.S. as a teenager and faced racism at every turn. Instead of backing down, he fought with intelligence, resilience, and sheer force of will. Before Hollywood, Poitier joined the U.S. Army during World War II, where he trained as a military hospital attendant. He later escaped the Army by pretending to be mentally unfit, outsmarting the system to pursue acting. When he entered Hollywood, black actors were given only stereotypical, degrading roles. Poitier refused them all, demanding scripts that showcased intelligence, dignity, and strength. His performances in Lilies of the Field, 1963, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, 1967, shattered Hollywood's racial barriers. Poitier wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for an entire generation. Directors, producers, and even fellow actors tried to force him into submissive roles, but he stood his ground and became the first black man to win an Academy Award for Best Actor. His battles weren't with fists, but with an unbreakable mind, relentless courage, and the ability to change history. That's why Sidney Poitier is the toughest black actor in Hollywood history. Poitier once rejected a $5 million film deal because the role was disrespectful, choosing dignity over money. If you loved this, you'll want to see what's next. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more legendary stories. And don't forget, check out this next video because you won't believe what we've uncovered.